My name is Lakshmi. I'm 60 years old. And today, I say that name out loud without flinching. But finding this voice, this simple, stubborn voice, took me a lifetime. For most of my life, I wasn't allowed to speak, not really. I could talk, of course, but only about the right things, the grocery list, the state of the laundry, whether the rice was cooked just right. But dreams? Opinions? Ambitions? Those were not meant for a woman like me. I was born in a small village in South India. My earliest memories are not of books or toys, but of chores. Carrying water jars that were too heavy for my arms. Watching my brothers put on their school uniforms while I stayed behind, sweeping the mud floor. My father would say, "Girls don't need school. They need discipline." I didn't even know what a dream meant. I never imagined being anything other than what I was told I would be, a good wife. A silent wife. At 17, I was married to a man 10 years older than me. He was educated. He wore glasses, spoke English, and corrected me when I mispronounced words I had only ever heard, never read. He liked having a wife who couldn't read, because it meant I couldn't question him. He controlled everything. The money, the schedule, the tone of the house. He'd toss papers at me and say, "Sign here," and I would scribble my name, not knowing what I was agreeing to. Sometimes, he laughed at me in front of his friends. "My wife thinks a ballad is a cooking utensil," he joked once at a party. They laughed. I didn't. But I listened. And I remembered. I remembered every insult, every missed opportunity. I remembered how he looked at me when I tried to help our son with his homework and stumbled over the alphabet. I remember the sting. And I remember the quiet decision I made that day, while stirring dal over a hot stove, that I would no longer be the joke in the room. When my children started school, I began learning in secret. I sat beside them while they practiced writing, pretending to watch but really memorizing. I wrote letters in the dust behind the house. I learned to spell my own name by copying it from my daughter's notebooks. I began watching educational programs on the small TV in the corner of our living room, volume low, attention high. Neighbors mocked me. "What's the point?" they said. "You're too old. Just accept your fate." My husband smirked when he found my scribbled notes. Trying to be young again, he'd scoff. But something had cracked open inside me. I had found a reason to wake up that wasn't just survival. I was not too old. I was just beginning. I remember the first time I stepped into an adult literacy center. My sorry was neatly pressed, but my hands were trembling. The teacher, a young woman no older than my own daughter, smiled gently at me and said, "You must be Lakshmi." It was the first time someone had said my name with pride, not pity. I sat in the front row, by choice. I didn't care that I was the oldest person in the room. I didn't care that the others whispered or giggled at my hesitation. I was used to whispers. But I wasn't here for them. I was here for me. The blackboard became my universe. Every letter, every vowel felt like a gift the world had once stolen from me and now was being returned, piece by piece. I still remember the day I read an entire sentence for the first time without help. The sun rises in the east. So simple. So ordinary. And yet, it felt like the sun had risen in me. I started waking up earlier than ever, not to cook or sweep, but to study. I reviewed vocabulary while hanging the laundry. I repeated multiplication tables while grinding spices. Every part of my day became a classroom, and my home, once a place of silent resignation, became filled with the soft hum of possibility. My children noticed. My daughter once caught me reading her science book. She didn't laugh. She hugged me. "I'm proud of you, Amma," she whispered. Those 4 words meant more than any award I could ever win. But not everyone celebrated. My husband mocked me still. He said I was embarrassing him, chasing something that didn't belong to my age or class. But something inside me had shifted forever. His words no longer held the power they once did. For the first time, I saw them for what they were: fear. He was afraid of a woman who could read the fine print. When I passed my literacy exam, I didn't throw a party. I simply bought myself a notebook, my own, brand new, untouched. On the first page, I wrote, in my careful new handwriting, "Lakshmi can read." And I wept. Not because it was hard, though it was, but because I had taken something sacred back. My mind. My dignity. My voice. And this was only the beginning. The first time I held a university admission form in my hands, I froze. It wasn't fear. It wasn't hesitation. It was awe. I had filled out dozens of forms in my life, school permission slips, medical papers, bank documents, but always for someone else. Always with someone else's guidance. Now, every line on that form asked for my story. My details. My future. I wrote my name slowly. Lakshmi Devi. It looked bold in blue ink. Like it belonged there. The admissions counselor raised her eyebrows as she read through my file. "You're starting now?" she asked kindly. I smiled. Yes. Now is the perfect time. I was 54. Not exactly the average freshman. At orientation, surrounded by students half my age, I sat with my back straight and my chin high. I wore the same saris I'd always worn, but this time they felt like armor, bright, unapologetic, woven from stories no one else in the room had lived. I wasn't trying to fit in. I was making space for myself. The coursework was hard. There were nights when my eyes blurred from so much reading, when I struggled with essays and grammar and unfamiliar academic terms. But never once did I think of giving up. My years of silence had taught me endurance. If I could survive being laughed at for mispronouncing vegetable, I could survive a tough statistics assignment. I chose to major in sociology. I wanted to understand why women like me were told our voices didn't matter. I wanted to study the systems that had kept my mother, my aunts, my neighbors in chains of quiet compliance. Every lecture felt like peeling away another layer of shame I had carried for decades. One day, during a class discussion, a student complained, "My parents are pressuring me to follow tradition." I raised my hand and said, "Sometimes, tradition is just fear in disguise." The room fell silent. And then, applause. For me. For Lakshmi. I started a small group for other older women on campus, women who had returned to school after raising families, surviving abuse, or simply being told for years they weren't the academic type. We called ourselves the Second Sunrise. We studied together, cried together, laughed until our cheeks hurt. We weren't just students. We were reclaiming something sacred: time. When my name appeared on the university's honor board for academic excellence, I stood there staring at it for minutes. It wasn't just a name on a wall. It was a name that had once been mocked, dismissed, erased. Now, it was printed in gold. I looked at myself in the mirror, barely recognizing the reflection. A black graduation gown hung on my shoulders, and the cap sat slightly tilted atop my neatly pinned hair. My daughter had helped me style it that morning, tears in her eyes. "You look like justice," she whispered. I smiled, but my heart thundered. The ceremony hall buzzed with excitement. Families, friends, professors, all gathered to celebrate. I walked slowly to my seat among the graduates, surrounded by youth and ambition. But my ambition had wrinkles. It wore the scent of cumin and jasmine. And it had waited a long, long time for this moment. When my name, Lakshmi Devi, was called, I stood. My legs trembled, not from weakness but from the weight of everything they carried: childhood silence, broken dreams, late-night studying, whispered insults I had buried deep. I climbed the steps and received my degree with a grip so firm the dean chuckled. "You've earned it," he said. "Twice over." My family sat in the back row. My children clapped the loudest. My husband, now my ex-husband, was not there. But I didn't feel the absence. I felt freedom. I felt like I had picked up every shattered piece of myself and assembled something new, something stronger. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She was shaking. "Ma'am," she said, "I was going to drop out this semester. But your story, it made me stay." I hugged her. Not as a hero, but as someone who knew how heavy it is to feel unseen. I spent that summer writing essays, not for grades, but for the world. My words were published in journals, then newspapers, then in a small book titled Unlearning Silence, A Woman's Journey to Her Own Voice. I spoke at libraries, schools, even at the very university that once felt too large for me. One day, I received a letter. It was from my father. We hadn't spoken in years. Inside, a single line: "I was wrong. I'm proud of you." I held the letter to my chest. Forgiveness didn't come easy, but neither had anything else. And I had learned that even broken roots could grow new flowers. I now teach part-time at a community center for women. Some can't read. Some are just learning to write their names. I see myself in every one of them, the quiet rebellion in their eyes, the small fires flickering. I tell them, it's never too late. You don't need permission. Just begin. I'm 60 now. I've lived lifetimes in one. And this life, the one I chose for myself, is the one I'm most proud of.